Well, you've got to think on your feet. This, you may have a perfectly clear picture in your mind at the beginning of the day of how this day is going to go, and it may take a 180-degree turn in the first 15 minutes. And so you've got to, you've already set your ego aside. That's not part of it. It's how can we accomplish the mission. And if you've got to redesign and figure out a better way to get the job done, and then that's what you do. So the part of it is it's like teaching. You build a lesson plan. It's your best guess of how you're going to make this thing work. But if you don't monitor and adjust, it's a waste. You'll waste your time and your people's time.
Yeah.
I would say the other thing that I've learned, and I think Gary and Carlton would echo this, is the communication piece. You've got to communicate. If you think you've communicated, you need to double it, because you probably think you have, but you may not have. And that's huge. I mean, you can never give too much information to people, and it's part of that transparency thing. And we all get so busy and overwhelmed with things, and we're living and breathing this stuff day in and day out, that sometimes we forget to keep everyone involved and keep everyone up to speed. And I think the communication piece, if I had to say one area where I know I could improve, it would be in communication of where we're at, and keeping people apprised, and keeping that whole sense of urgency of what are we going to do, how are we going to improve student achievement. And you get so overwhelmed with everything you're doing, sometimes you just literally don't have the time to do it. And at the same time, that's not an excuse. You've got to be able to communicate.
What I've heard both of you say here too is that this is something you live and breathe daily. It's not an event that happens when your on-site or your administrators come in for a on-site in-service.
And what's so easy to forget, I think, is that we live and breathe it daily. Site administrators live and breathe it daily as well, but from their perspective in a school building, and we're in a very different perspective here, and so that communication is even more important. You may think that they're in a certain place, and you get to really communicating with them and find out you're the one that's out of sync. I mean, they're here and you're clear out here, and you've got to get some communication going and figuring out just exactly where it needs
how to bring the two of you closer together.
Exactly. It's really true with the school board as well. I mean,
why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, we found that we got so excited with a lot of our initiatives with this learning community that we were getting too far ahead of the school board, and so we've tried to hold regular work sessions prior to each board meeting to really spend some time and try to build a pretty thorough understanding of, for one thing, the sense of urgency that Dan talked about. We've got to do something to make things better for our kids, and the board definitely is all over that. They're understand that, and then the bigger picture is what we're doing about it, and so we're constantly working with them, trying to apprise them of what where we want to go and what our vision is, and hopefully they'll approve it and be with us. And so far it's worked out.
What would you want others to learn from your implementation experience? So we're hoping to share your experience to other schools and districts across the state. What would you want them to learn, and what would you do differently if you could do it over again? And you've maybe touched on a couple of things, so if you want to elaborate a little further, that would be great.
I guess, I think it really is a huge benefit in terms of getting the most productivity out of out of a team of people, particularly educators. And so, you know, I very highly recommend using that approach. One thing I have to remember is that, you know, this is the only district I've worked in, 32 years. But from what I hear, we're a little bit different than some other districts in terms of where we've come from, and we've always sort of been a little more independent and a little more site-based as far as management. And so, you know, we come from more of, I think, of a background of we're actually in some respects trying to pull together more, and I think, you know, there's this big movement to become more site-based, and we're so site-based that if we pull in, we're probably about where we ought to be. So it's kind of interesting. But I think our needs may be different than some of the other districts, but it truly is a great way to do business, I think.
And I would just say that, you know, I characterize this as my Harvard education, because I truly learn something new every day. And if I were to be able to give some pointers to other districts, I would say it really has to be, for me, it's about your attitude, and having an attitude of we're here to serve, and building that team collaborative approach. It's, you know, it can't be the traditional top-down hierarchy of education. Doesn't work. We will make so much more growth in terms of the end product of our students if we approach it from a team collaborative approach rather than a top-down approach. Plus, it's just a whole lot more fun. It is just, you know, when you get in that group of site administrators and you feel the power in there, and you know that you're a part of it, and you're not, it's not the top-down piece, that you're all in it together, you all have the same goal. If you can build that team atmosphere and that team approach, and have a stewardship sort of attitude about things, boy, hang on, because you're in for the ride of your life.
I think maybe we didn't answer one of your questions. What would you do differently?
Mm-hmm.
I think I would answer that as not a thing.
Mm.
You know, I mean, there are things you think in retrospect, man, I should have done that this way, but that's how you learn. That, you know, how would I have known if I hadn't done it that way? So I'm pretty happy with the way this is all going.
Yeah.